In this video, we'll be discussing IPMN or intraductal papillary mucinous neoplasms. Now, as the name suggests, it is intraductal, that means it is found within the main pancreatic duct or in the side branch ducts. These neoplasms are lined by papillary epithelium which secretes mucin. Now, there are three subtypes based on the pattern of the ductal involvement. So, first you have your MD-IPMN or main duct IPMN. Then you have BD-IPMN or branch duct IPMN. This affects only the small side branches. Lastly, you have the mixed type IPMN, which is a combination of both main duct as well as branch duct IPMN. Now, in mixed type IPMN, what happens is that the side branch is involved, which then extends into the main duct, which then results in upstream dilatation. So, for example, if this is the pancreas, now this is the duct. Supposing, say, these are the side branches. Now, say this is the side branch IPMN. Now, this extends to the main duct and it causes dilatation of the main duct in an upstream fashion. Now, this is called mixed type IPMN. Now, this image is taken from Netters and shows the different parts of the pancreas. So, you first have the head, you have the neck, the body, the tail. The tail is that part which tickles the splenic hilum. The head, as you can see, is within the duodenal loop. Here you have the uncinate process. Now this is an image which shows the pancreatic duct. For this topic, this image is more important. Now here you can see the pancreatic duct of Hirschsprung. This is the main pancreatic duct. This receives a tributary, that is the accessory pancreatic duct of Santorini. And you can also see numerous side branches over here. All these side branches, they drain into the main pancreatic duct. Now the main pancreatic duct and the common bile duct, they have an opening called the ampulla of Vater. Now IPMN is most commonly seen in the head of the pancreas, followed by diffuse, then in the body and tail. So if you look at this image over here, the head of the pancreas, this part is most commonly involved in an IPMN, and this has clinical implications as well, because as you can see, the head has the CBD. So you can often get jaundice or pancreatitis in IPMN. Now, IPMN is equally common in men as well as women, as opposed to mucinous neoplasm, which is more common in women, and as opposed to pseudocystopancreas, which is more common in men. Now, the most common age group at which IPMN is seen is 60 to 70 years. Now, the diagnosis of IPMN is increasing because of the increasing use of CT-MRI. So, a patient gets a CT-MRI done for other reasons, and an IPMN is incidentally detected. These incidental cases are contributing to the rise of the number of cases of IPMN. Now, IPMN has a wide spectrum of epithelial changes. It can range from benign to malignant to invasive malignant. Now, certain terms which were earlier used to describe IPMN are no longer used. These are adenoma and carcinoma in situ. These terms are obsolete, they've been abandoned and are no longer used. The current HPE grading classifies IPMN as low-grade dysplasia, moderate-grade dysplasia, high-grade dysplasia, and the presence or absence of malignancy. Now, since an IPMN, it encompasses a wide spectrum of epithelial changes, we need to understand what is the risk of malignant transformation for an IPMN. Now, a lot of genes were analyzed, but they came to the conclusion that these genes cannot contribute or they cannot predict the risk of malignancy of an IPMN. So, how do you Describe the malignant transformation risk. Now, this is based on the features of CECT and MRI. So, a patient comes to you with symptoms of IPMN. You get a CECT done. You diagnose an IPMN. Now, the patient asks you, okay, doctor, what is my risk of of my IPMN turning into a malignant lesion? So, you tell the patient, look, there are two categories. One is high risk feature, and the other is a worrisome feature. Now, high risk features are mainly three. The first is when the main duct is more than 1 centimeter in diameter, when there's an enhancing neural nodule of more than 5 millimeter, and when the patient presents with jaundice. Now, if any of these three high risk features are present, you will go for upfront surgery and you will do resection. So, now then you have the worrisome features. The worrisome features, so in high risk features, you had the main duct more than 1 centimeters. In worrisome features, you have the main duct which is 5 to 9 millimeters. So more than 10 mm is high risk, 5 to 9 mm is worrisome. If it is less than 5 mm, so say it is 3 mm or 4 mm, you can leave it alone. It should not be a cause for concern. The second risk factor is an enhancing neural nodule of size less than 5 millimeters as compared to more than 5 millimeters, which is seen in high risk features. Then if your branch duct IPMN cyst size is more than 3 centimeters, that too is a worrisome feature. Now, if the cyst has a thickened and enhancing cyst wall, that too is a worrisome feature. If there is an abrupt change of caliber in the main duct with upstream atrophy, that also would be a worrisome feature. Then if the patient has lymphadenopathy, pancreatitis, if there is an increased serum CA19-9, or if the cyst growth is more than 5 millimeters over 2 years. This is also important. Now, see, this more than 3 centimeters, this over here, is a worrisome feature. So, supposing when the patient comes to you initially, it is 2 centimeters. So, you tell him, look, it is benign, no need to worry. You tell her rather. I mean, him and her, it is equal in both. It is equal in both men and women. So, you can tell him or you can tell her. Now, if after say 2 years, the size of this IPMN, it becomes 2.5 centimeters. Sorry, if it becomes 2.6 centimeters, then the change is 0.6 centimeter in 2 years. This comes under worrisome feature. So if the patient has a worrisome feature, what do? You next do an endoscopic ultrasound. When you do an endoscopic ultrasound, you will look for these three features. The first, you will see a definite neural nodule of size 5 millimeters or more. Second, you will see main duct features which are suspicious for involvement. And lastly, if you do a fine needle aspiration of the cyst contents and you do a cytology of it, you will see that it is suspicious or positive for malignancy. Now let us first discuss branch duct IPMN. Now, a branch duct IPMN, it can either be focal or it can be multifocal. This focal is the color of wine, and this involves only one side duct, as you can see over here. On the other hand, multifocal is that which involves numerous side branches. So now you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, supposing a patient comes to you with symptoms of IPMN, you do a CT scan done, or rather he comes to you with symptoms of pain abdomen. You send a patient for the CT scan, and on the CT you see multiplicity of cysts. That means you see multiple cysts. This would favor a diagnosis of branch duct IPMN. Now, you tell the patient that, look, you have branch duct IPMN, but then, so how do you manage that? So you will tell the patient, look, we'll first see whether there are any high risk stigmata present. So the high risk stigmata would include, firstly, obstructive jaundice in a patient with cystic lesion of the head of the pancreas. Second, enhancing neural nodule of more than 5 millimeters or more, and a main pancreatic duct of 10 mm or more. If these are present, you consider surgery if clinically appropriate. If clinically appropriate means if the patient is fit for surgery. Now, supposing these high risk stigmata are not present, it is a no. Then what do? Then you look for worrisome features. Now, these worrisome features, which is mentioned in two categories over here, clinical and imaging, are the same as the ones that we discussed here, these 9 points. Now, supposing these are present, if yes, then you do an endoscopic ultrasound. On doing an endoscopic ultrasound, you look for those three features, these three features. 1, 2, 3. If these are present, if these features are present, if this is a yes, then you would again consider surgery. Now, supposing when you look for worrisome features, there are no worrisome features, then what do you do next? You will look at the size of the largest cyst. Now, the size of the cyst is grouped under 4 categories. The first is less than 1 centimeter, second is 1 to 2 centimeters, the third is 2 to 3 centimeters, and lastly, you have more than 3 centimeters. Now, if the size is less than 2 centimeters, it has a low risk for malignancy. This is what I've circled in green. So, you can see that if the size is less than 2 centimeters, it has a low risk for malignancy, and therefore, the most appropriate course of management would be regular surveillance. Now, surveillance is done by either CT or MRI, and initially you do the surveillance more frequently, and then if there is no change seen in the lesion, you would increase the duration between the successive scans. So, if it is less than 1 centimeter, you will do it once in every 6 months and then every 2 years. If it is 1 to 2 centimeters, this is the same. You do it once in 6 months for 1 year. Then you do it yearly for 2 years. And then if there is no change, then you can increase the interval up to 2 years. So the difference between these two is, here you will do only one scan at 6 months. Here you will do 2 scans at 6 months difference. Now supposing say the cyst size is more than 2 centimeters, then you again classify it as 2 to 3 centimeters or 3 centimeters. Now if it is between 2 to 3, then what do you do? Now if it is more than 2, in both these groups, a new modality is added, which is an endoscopic ultrasound. So if it is 2 to 3 centimeters, you do an endoscopic ultrasound in 3 to 6 months. Then you lengthen the interval up to 1 year, and you alternate MRI with endoscopic ultrasound as appropriate. Now, supposing say the patient is young, the patient is fit, and the patient does not want the hassle of prolonged surveillance, you can offer surgery to the patient. The same goes with a cyst size of more than 3 centimeters. You will do close surveillance, alternating MRI with endoscopic ultrasound every 3 to 6 months, and you will consider surgery in young and fit patients. So, two takeaway points from this cyst size. The first is that if it is more than 2 centimeters, the risk of malignancy is higher, and you add an endoscopic ultrasound, and you will consider surgery if the patient is young, fit, and has a low ECOG score. Now, the second takeaway point was, if the size is less than 2 centimeters, there is a low risk for malignancy. Now, this we've been discussing if no worrisome features are present. Now, if worrisome features are present, then what do? If yes, you do an endoscopic ultrasound, you look for these features, yes, you do a clinical surgery. If these are not present, you will again look for the size of the largest cyst, as you would look for if no worrisome features are present on CT scan. On the other hand, if the endoscopic ultrasound is inconclusive, then you will again do close surveillance. So the variables which play a role in decision making, apart from the high risk and the worrisome features and the endoscopic ultrasound features, are age and whether the patient has any comorbidities. Because the presence of comorbidities, the age would determine or would have a bearing on the fitness of the patient for surgery. Now, supposing a patient does not fall in the category of high risk or worrisome features, but if the patient is symptomatic, this means the patient is still at a risk for malignancy, and you do a surgical resection. Now, we've been talking so much about an IPMN becoming malignant. So now, what is the risk of malignancy in a branch duct IPMN? There are two broad headings in this. One is the overall risk and one is the annual risk. Now, as you can see, the overall risk is approximately 10 to 15%, and the annual risk is approximately 2 to 3% per year. Now, if a patient is asymptomatic and the patient has small branch duct tumors, it means that the risk of malignancy is low, and therefore you will do surveillance. Now, supposing a patient is old when he presents to you, when he or she presents to you, and the patient asks, okay, look, doctor, my lesion is right now benign, and so do I have to come for surveillance or do I have to get operated? You tell him, no, look, we could have operated you, but you're old, so we can't. So he'll ask, okay, do I have to come for surveillance? What is the time required for the lesion to degenerate into a malignant lesion? So in some instances, depending on the age of the patient, the time required for development of invasive malignant disease is higher than the life expectancy. Now, in such a situation, instead of troubling the patient, you can forego doing surveillance. Now, the second type of IPMN is your main duct IPMN. This is an abnormal cystic dilatation of the main pancreatic duct, that is the duct of Wirsum. Now, these cysts are lined by an epithelium which undergoes columnar metaplasia. Also, thick mucinous secretions ooze out of a patulous papilla. This means when you do an endoscopy, as is seen in this brilliant image, when you do an endoscopy, you will first see a patulous ampulla of Vater. This is the patulous ampulla of Vater, and you can see mucin protruding out of this ampulla of Vater. This is pathognomonic and is classically seen in IPMN, and this is also described as fish mouth appearance. Now this, what you see here, is most likely a blood clot. Now the involvement of a main pancreatic duct can either be focal or it can be diffuse. So if this is the pancreas, this is the pancreatic duct, the main pancreatic duct, it can either be focal or it can be diffuse. Now, what are the clinical features of such patients? Approximately 50% present to you with pain abdomen, and approximately 25% come to you with acute pancreatitis. So, therefore, it is not surprising that a patient who actually has an IPMN has presented in the past with acute pancreatitis, so much so that he is now diagnosed as a case of chronic pancreatitis. Now, what is the risk of malignant degeneration of a main duct IPMN? It has a 30 to 50% risk of harboring invasive pancreatic cancer at the time of presentation. That means when the patient comes to you, the main duct IPMN has already degenerated into an invasive pancreatic cancer. This is why the treatment that you offer is surgical resection. Instead of doing further surveillance or further trying to categorize the lesion by an endoscopic ultrasound, you would rather do a surgical resection. Now, if you were to compare the risk of malignancy of the main duct with the branch duct, so let us scroll up and see again. So see here, the branch duct, the risk is 10 to 15% overall risk and 2 to 3% per annum, but main duct is 30 to 50%. Since this risk is considerably higher, you offer the patient surgery. Now, what are the predictors of malignancy for a patient with main duct IPMN? First, if the patient has jaundice, increased alkaline phosphatase, the patient has mural nodules, note the plural here. If the patient is diabetic, if the main pancreatic duct is more than 7 millimeters. Now, the size of the main pancreatic duct, it can further be grouped into three categories. So the first was, if it is more than 7 millimeters, it is a higher risk of becoming malignant. Now, 7 millimeters, 7 or more millimeters is high risk, or rather it predicts the lesion turning into malignancy. But if it is 5 millimeters or more, so supposing say it is 5 or 6 millimeters, it is worrisome. But if it is more than 1 centimeter, it is of the highest risk. Okay. Now, how do you diagnose a main duct IPMN? So on a CT scan, you will see a dilated main pancreatic duct. You can see cysts of varying sizes. and you'll see mural nodules which can enhance on a contrast enhanced CT, on a CCT. Now, if you look at this cross-sectional imaging of main duct IPMN, you will see a prominent ampulla of Vater. This is the cyst. This is the cyst, which is seen in the head of the pancreas. This is the prominent ampulla of Vater, and this is your dilated main pancreatic duct. Now, what are the secondary investigation that you will do in a case of MDIPN? So, if you just scroll up for a second, you will notice that the diagnosis was done by CT scan. Now, what are the secondary investigations that you can do in a patient, or that you should do in a patient with main duct IPMN? The first is an MRCP. Now, in an MRCP, you will notice localization of mural nodules, and or rather, the MRCP is used to localize mural nodules, and it can also give you a pre-treatment classification of suspected branch duct IPMN or main duct IPMN depending on the diameter of the main duct IPMNs. Now, this pre-treatment classification is what we had earlier discussed. If it is more than 1 centimeter, it is of highest risk. If it is 7 millimeters or more, it is of risk. And if it is 5 millimeters or 6 millimeters, it is worrisome. Basically, MRCP is used to delineate the anatomy. You can see the anatomy, the intrinsic anatomy of the pancreas, that is the parenchyma and the duct, very clearly in MRCP. The other investigation is an endoscopic ultrasound. This is used to evaluate the pancreatic duct and to assess the fluid and solid components of neoplasm. Now, we are used to seeing that an ultrasound which we routinely use in our OPDs or in our emergencies, it can tell us whether the lesion has a fluid component or a solid component. This is one of the most basic features that an ultrasound can tell you, right from your thyroid to your abdomen lesions. So in an endoscopic ultrasound, you will therefore use an endoscopic ultrasound to assess whether the neoplasm has a fluid component or a solid component. Now, when you do a fine needle aspiration of the lesion, that is of a main duct or a branch duct IPMN, you will first notice that it is viscous. It is viscous because it contains mucin, and it is clear. Now, when you further do cytology, you will have two findings. First, it is mucin-rich fluid, and this mucin-rich fluid has variable cellularity. Secondly, columnar mucinous cells will be present in the mucin, and these have variable atypia. Now, in IPMN, that is your main duct IPMN, branch duct IPMN, and your mixed IPMN, along with your mucinous cystis neoplasm. So, in IPMN and MCN, these are the three subtypes 1, 2, 3. So, in your MCN and your IPN, these patients have an elevated carcinoembryonic antigen or a CEA, and it is usually, or the minimum level is 192. So if it is more than 192, you will have a high suspicion of these two lesions. But what is interesting is that the level of CEA, it does not correlate with malignancy. That means, say, supposing the patient's CEA is 400, but you're using a cutoff of 182 to diagnose it, you will still not so the cutoff is 192, but the patient has a CA level of 400, you still cannot say that it has a higher risk of malignancy. So the level is not important as much as the presence. Now, what is a mixed type IPMN? In a mixed type IPMN, what happens is, see this carefully. First, a side branch IPMN is involved. This side branch, it extends to the main duct to a varying degree. So now you can see here, initially what I've shaded in the same color as this, slightly wine color. Now this, you can see that the side duct was involved, and it is extending to the main pancreatic duct. This is the extension. That is why it is called a mixed type IPMN. So what happens is, A side branch cyst. Now the other sorry, this is your mixed type IPMN. Also, when else would you diagnose a mixed type IPMN? If you see a side branch cyst, so here you can see a side branch cyst, and supposing there is upstream dilatation of the pancreatic duct, but you cannot actually see a main duct involvement. So you're not seeing a direct main duct involvement, rather you're seeing upstream dilatation of the main pancreatic duct. Then too, it means that the main duct is involved, and you will call it a mixed type IPMN. So see here, it is only a side branch cyst, but there is upstream dilatation. So when you compare this diagram and this diagram, you can see that the size of the pancreatic duct is way bigger in the second diagram than the first diagram, but only the side branch is involved, but the main duct is involved. This means it is main duct involvement. So side branch cyst plus upstream dilatation means main duct involvement, and therefore it is mixed. Moving on, the biologic behavior of a mixed type IPMN is similar to the main duct IPMN. Therefore, it has an increased risk of malignancy. So the risk of malignancy in a mixed type IPMN is similar to that of a main duct IPMN. Basically, as soon as the main duct is involved, the properties of the main duct are more seen than the properties of only a side duct involvement, and the treatment would therefore be a surgical resection. Now, when you do a surgical resection for IPMN, now let us discuss the surgical resection for IPMN. The treatment for high-risk lesions is always a partial pancreatectomy. So now when you do a partial pancreatectomy, the first question that comes in your mind is, okay, what is my extent of pancreatic resection? So first, if you see a branch duct IPMN, your resection should just target the lesion of concern. So wherever the lesion is there, you resect that lesion and you're done. Now, for a main duct IPMN, it is not possible to determine the extent of the microscopic abnormality. So what you do is, you'll have to look for other findings. So what other findings do you see? Supposing if diffuse polyps are absent and enhancing nodules in the main duct are absent, then your surgery would be right-sided pancreatectomy. Why right-sided pancreatectomy? Because the lesions are more common in the head of the pancreas. So I'll just repeat this. In a main duct IPMN, it is not possible to determine the extent of microscopic abnormality. So you do not know how much you have to resect, because you do not know, because the lesion there might be microscopic involvement of the remnant pancreas if you just do a gross resection. So to be sure that you're not leaving any lesion behind, if you're not, to be sure that you are not doing an R1 resection or an R2 resection, you will look for these two findings. First, if diffuse polyps are absent and if enhancing nodules are absent, you will just do a right-side pancreatectomy. But at the same time, you will do a frozen section of neck margin. Now, when you do a frozen section of the neck margin, you will, if these two findings are seen in the margin, that is, there is high-grade dysplasia or if there is invasive carcinoma. Now, again, notice here, the terms have been changed. It is no longer carcinoma in situ, and it is no longer adenoma. The new classification is low-grade dysplasia, moderate-grade dysplasia, high-grade dysplasia, plus or minus the absence of malignancy. So if you're seeing high-grade dysplasia or you're seeing invasive carcinoma, your treatment will be a total pancreatectomy. So this is the importance of frozen section, and this is the difference between main duct and in a branch duct. So in a branch duct, your resection is just targeting the lesion of concern. Because if only the branch duct is involved, that part you remove, you're done with it. But if the main duct is involved, your chances of a microscopic involvement is higher. Now, once you've done your surgery, you obviously have to call the patient for follow-up. So you'll call the patient for follow-up and you'll do a surveillance of the remnant pancreas. This is because you want to see two things. First is the recurrence. Second is the risk of malignancy. Now, the risk of malignancy after surgery is 5 to 22%. Now, this surveillance of remnant pancreas, we are talking only about right-sided pancreatectomy. We're not talking about total-sided right-sided pancreatectomy or branch duct IPMN. In these two conditions, you might have recurrence or you might have a change to malignancy, a degeneration into malignancy. So only in a partial pancreas surgery, you have to do surveillance of the remnant pancreas. If you're doing a total pancreatectomy, obviously no pancreas is left behind, so you would not be worried about surveillance. So when you do a surveillance of the remnant pancreas, first what you have to look for is recurrence. Second thing that you look for is risk of malignancy, and this risk is approximately 5 to 22%. Now supposing on surveillance you notice that the disease has recurred or that there is a progression of disease in the remnant, that means it is turning towards malignancy or it is showing a worrisome feature, your treatment would be resurgery. So the next question that comes to mind is, till when do I have to do surveillance? So you terminate surveillance, or rather you do surveillance depending on the age and the condition of the patient. Now let us look at the prognosis of the different lesions. Now, even though an intraductal papillary mucinous neoplasm has a risk of malignancy, the survival of an IPMN patient is still better than that of a patient who has pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma. Secondly, the survival of a non-invasive IPMN is better than an invasive IPMN. This is obviously common sense. Lastly, the survival of an IPMN is better than that of a borderline IPMN. This is also common sense. But what is important here is that an IPMN patient prognosis is better than that of a PTAC. Yeah. So this concludes the discussion of IPMN. This presentation has been taken only from Sabiston, and I have not referred to other books. So if any point is missing, it is not because it is not mentioned in Sabiston. Now this image shows an intraductal papillary mucinous. These images are not from Sabiston. If this image shows an intraductal papillary mucinous neoplasm, so you can see this is the gross appearance, and you can see that the main pancreatic duct is dilated. So you can see the dilatation over here. This is your bowel, this is your duodenum, and you can see that the main pancreatic duct is dilated, and the surrounding parenchyma is fibrotic. Now again, this is another image of a gross and a microscopic image of IPMN. So this is the pancreas, this is the dilated main pancreatic duct, and you can see the growths over here in the pancreatic duct. Yeah, so this concludes the discussion of IPMN.